I posted a video 2 or 3 weeks ago talking about my $1.6 million real estate portfolio. And after I did that, some people kind of were saying, hey, how did you do this so quick? You're so young. How are you able to do this in such a short amount of time? Now that $1.6 million, that's just the total value of the real estate. That's not our net worth. So right as of today, our net worth is sitting right around $700,000. And even still, I'd say that's pretty impressive for a 27-year-old. So today I'm going step by step, showing you how I did it, how we started, and how we've been able to build our wealth quickly through rental properties. Okay, so the very first thing that I did, the very first property that I ever purchased was a single family home. And I've talked about that in other videos about how I did a house hack. I rented the room out to my buddies. I'll link that video up here if you're interested in seeing that. But that property I purchased for $4,500 at the age of 23. That is a terrible arrow. Let's try that again. Age of 23. Now I purchased again just a single family house, and just so I can keep track of all these, this is going to get kind of messy. I'm just going to say this was my 9666 property. That was just the number on the front of the house. So like I said, I scrounged up $4,500 to purchase this house, and that was so difficult for me. At the time, I was making $40,000 a year. Like, even though I was living for free, well, I guess I wasn't living for free then. I was paying rent then. So I was living in an apartment. I was living with roommates. Even still, my rent was like $350 a month for a room. It still was really difficult for me to save that $4,500. I remember I paid off a motorcycle, and I remember selling it to some guy on Craigslist. And I took those $100 bills and I fanned them out on the floor because I never thought that I would have that much money ever again in my entire life. And I just wanted to take a picture and remember that I had this in cash. Like, it was so much money to me. But that was the amount of money that I put down on my very first house. That was the down payment. I think there was a little bit more for closing costs, but $4,500 to get into this property. I purchased this property for $144,000. Now remember, this was back in 2015, so this was 5 years ago. So not super long ago, but still, things have changed a bit. So I lived in that house for 2 years, and I rented the room out, all the rooms out to my friends and my buddies, and that's how I lived for free. I would rent the rooms out for $350 a piece, and I live completely for free, and it also bought me lunch about once or twice a month. So 2 years later, my life had changed quite a bit. I was getting married. A lot of different things had changed, and so I decided I'm done living with roommates. I'm going to actually sell my house and move in with my wife because she had a house already. So I sold this house for $186,000. And after closing costs and fees and everything else, we walked away with about $40,000 cash. Now this $40,000, this was like, I thought $4,500 was a lot of money. $40,000 blew my mind. In 2 years, doing almost nothing, I had $40,000 cash to my name. That was as much money as I made in a single year. And not to mention, there was no taxes or anything like that because I had lived in the property for 2 years. There were no capital gains. $40,000. I thought I was the richest person on the face of the planet. Now, I was pretty smart with the money, and I did 3 things with that. So the very first thing that I did was I took $25,000 of that, and I divided that into 2 categories, and I paid off all of my credit cards, and I also paid off my student loans. I had I'm trying to think now. I think I had right around $15,000 in student loans. I had a car loan. I guess that's true. This was also my car. So $25,000 credit card, student loans, and paid off my car. I thought, I figured that was a pretty good thing to do. The second thing that I did was we saved the other $15,000. I just put this in savings for a rainy day or whatever we decided to do next. The third thing that I did was I moved in with my wife, and hers was $51,446. Now, obviously, I needed a place to live, so we sold my house, moved in with my wife, and I was feeling pretty good. I mean, all of my debt was gone. It was a pretty freeing feeling. Now, we waited just a little bit and kind of let the dust settle, kind of waited for everything to kind of just, with the wedding and everything like that, we said, okay, we'll just sit on this money. We're newlyweds. I'm sure we're going to need it at some point. And so we just stashed that away. Now, after a while, though, I kind of started to get this bug, and I was thinking, you know what? I've never made so much money in my entire life, and I just did that with one house. Like, what happens if I did this again? What if we found another rental property? So that's exactly what we did. We started going to real estate meetup groups and networking with people. We got connected to a realtor, and he actually introduced us to this property, which was a steal of a deal. So this was actually two homes. So the first house, and if you've watched other videos on my channel, I'm sure you've heard me talk about this. One was a single family home, we'll call it 1670. The other one was a mobile home trailer that was actually parked in the backyard of that same house. Now, we had to put down 15% for the down payment and closing costs. And we picked up, again, this is a steal of a deal. We picked up both of these properties for $93,000. Now, as of today, right where we're sitting, this is sitting right around $145,000 in value. So yeah, that was a pretty good buy. Now, even better than that, though, was that this property was also making $800 a month, and to this day it still is $800 a month net after cash flow and everything, expenses, maintenance, paying the mortgage, everything like that. This was amazing. This was so cool. The problem, though, was that when we bought this property, we used this $15,000 to be able to pay for the down payment and all the closing costs. So we're sitting there with these two properties. It's $800 a month. We're loving the cash flow. We're like, this is an amazing deal. We want to do this again. We didn't have any money. We had no money, and so we just stopped buying properties, right? No, of course not. So the next thing that we did, we were completely out of money. We had blown through our savings to buy this property, fix it up, and get it ready to go. Again, it was a great property. It's doing well, but what were we supposed to do next? So what we did was I think right around 2 months later, there was this other property that hit the market. It was a duplex. And it just, something seemed a little bit off about it. The purchase price was kind of cheap. The rent seemed a little bit low, at least based off the other property that we had just barely rented. And so we were like, I think this could work. So we actually went and we made an offer on this property, and I'll wow, that's terrible. Obviously you can tell I am not an artist. Let's try this again. Okay, so this is a duplex. We'll call this side 110, this side 112. Put a door here and a door here. Now, this property was $133,000. Now, for the down payment and the closing costs on this property, it was going to be $17,000 for the down and closing. We wanted this property, we didn't have the money, so what do? Well, if you remember, I moved in with my wife, and this property was an amazing deal. She bought this house before I even met her, and this is probably one of the main things that made me fall in love with her, is that she was into real estate too before we even met. So the cool thing about this property is that she had paid $155,000 for her house. Now, in the time that we lived there, we did two things. We paid down the mortgage to about $140,000, and on top of that, we finished the basement. So we put in some sweat equity. We cleaned up, or not cleaned up the yard. We put in a yard, did some landscaping, just made this a really nice house. In the 2 years that happened, this house was now worth $279,000. So that right there, there's $140,000 in equity. So what we did is we went and we got a HELOC on this house, which didn't allow us to access the whole $140,000, but it allowed us to access a significant amount. I can't remember how much they offered us, but it was plenty of money to pay for the $17,000 and then some. So we took this $144,000 and we went, and we bought this property. So again, we were in business. This property, I'm trying to think how much it made. I think it was like $650 a month net cash flow. But we owned that property for a little over a year. And after going into that property, fixing it up, it was under rented. One side was renting for $600 and the other side was completely vacant. And we knew that from the other house that we had just rented, we could get at least $850. So we raised one side to $925 and the other side to $775. It was a little bit more rundown, but with raising the rent and fixing up the property, we actually sold this duplex a little over a year later for $190,000. Now, some of you may be asking, why did you sell this property? Why didn't you just keep it? Well, we actually had another offer come up. There was a fourplex. We loved this duplex. It was doing great for us. There was no issues, but there was a fourplex coming up that we wanted to purchase. So we sold this property, and after closing costs and everything, we made about $58,000 net. So what happened? We'll do another line here. So we found a fourplex, and we'll go here, 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 here for the doors, and 190, 192, 194, and 196. So we found this we found this fourplex. I've got videos on that too if you want to see that. We bought this place for $300,000. Now, again, the reason we bought this was because it was under rented. There were a lot of things that we could fix up and increase rents, raise the values. And so we thought this was going to be a screaming deal. So we, I'm trying to think, I think it was $47,000 that we put down. And we also had closing costs with that. But that allowed us to get into this property. We still own this property to this day. And that gave us about $1,200 a month net that we were able to earn every single month. The great thing about this though was once we did raise rents or once we have raised rents, gone in, fixed a couple of things, this property is now worth $415,000. So I think you're kind of starting to understand this trend. We buy a place, we buy it when it's undervalued, fix it up, raise rents, do all these things to raise the value, borrow money from that, and put it into something else. Okay, so then what happened was my wife and I actually decided that we were going to sell her house. So this house up here, $140,000. After closing costs and realtor fees and all that kind of stuff, we really walked away with about $120,000 ish, somewhere around there. So obviously we needed a place to live because we just sold her house, so where were we going to live? So what we did was we decided to build our house, which is where we live now, and this is 5006. There's kind of this weird awkward time in there where we actually lived in a camper trailer. I've got a video on that if you want to see that video. But we had $120,000 and we took that money, and not all of it, we actually only put 5% down on this property, which came out to like roughly $15,000 down plus closing. We bought this house for $305,000. Let me redo that because I was, let's see, sheesh, $305,000. And so we've lived in this house for almost a year now, and in that time we have done a lot of things. One, we've also been lucky that we're in an appreciating market, but two, we've put in the sweat equity, we've put in a yard, sprinkler system, and we have finished the basement. And just 2 weeks ago, actually, our property appraised for $420,000. And again, that's with basement plus the yard. So you can see we've got $115,000 in equity right there. And then there were a couple other things that we did. So we bought another single family home. It was kind of a fixer-upper. I've got videos on that if you want to see that. This one was 1020. We bought it for $129,000. Just appraised for $183,000. We did a $30,000 cash out refi. We also bought another property that was a house flip, 363. We bought this one for 101,000. Selling it for 150,000. So we should walk away with plus our down payment will probably be 50-ish thousand with everything. Then we bought this property, which was 280. And I'm really bad at drawing houses. 97,000. 160,000, so we'll have 60-ish thousand out of that. And then after those houses, we bought our first commercial property, which I just did a video on. That was a 9-unit storage, or mini storage. We bought it for around 40,000 after doing kind of our fancy finagling. You can go watch that video. 65,000 is really what it's worth. And then we're planning on building more storage units in the near future, which once we add all of those, we'll do plus 10 units. Now this place will be worth like 115,000-ish. So I think you get the idea. I mean, there's lots of other little deals that have gone into this, and there's more. Like, I can go as deep as you want into this, but really that's what's gotten us to the $700,000 mark. You buy something that's undervalued, you either fix it up or you increase the rents. Whatever you do, you have to add value, because that's how you can increase your net worth so quickly. Whatever you do, you have to add value. Once you have that value added, you can pull that out. You can do cash out refis, you can do HELOCs, you can borrow against it, you can do all these different things. Take that money, access it, and put it into something else that performs. So whether that's equity in your own home or a rental property, cash out refi, all these different things, you could tap into that money, leverage it, borrow it, and then put it into something else. Now the great thing is that you want to make sure that you're not over leveraged. I think right now we're 60% leverage, which means in all of our properties, we've got 40% equity, which is amazing. So you can access that money, put it into something else, build it up, do it, and rinse and repeat. If you want to see kind of the nitty-gritty details, go and watch that other video about my real estate portfolio. I show you pictures of the properties, talked about some of the different things that we had to do to get into the properties, how we've added value, some of the flips that we've done, all those different things. But I think you'll notice that it really, it scales really quickly. And so if you notice back at the very, very beginning, I have never put in any more than, there's my arrow. I've never put in any more than that initial $4,500. Everything else has just grown from the value, and then we pull that money out, put it into something else, raise the value, pull it out, put it into something else. So my initial deposit is $450,000. Excuse me, $4,500. And then from there, it's just grown on its own. There's lots of ways that you can do this in your own backyard. You just have to be a little creative, find those deals that are undervalued, increase the value, and pretty soon your wealth will just grow and scale exponentially. So I'm only 27 years old, and we were able to do this really, truly in about a 2-year timeline. I mean, I guess if you count the very first house that I lived in for 2 years, we're sitting right around 4 years that we've been doing this, but really, truly, it grows so quickly. Because I'm only 27 years old, the goal is to keep doing this, and we want to hit $1 million before we're in our 30s. And I think that if we continue that track record, we'll absolutely be able to hit that. So if you guys like this video, if you found some value in that, please give me a thumbs up. It really helps us out with the YouTube algorithm. Be sure to subscribe down below for other content just like this. Until the next video, we'll catch you guys later. Thanks so much for watching.